it's been over almost a century now, over a century rather. We've been sitting and blaming, oh, the West has done this to the Muslim world, the West has done this to Muslim leadership, to the Muslim population. I think it's about time we moved on. Why sit and just criticize, oh, the West has done? Why have they been able to do it? Why don't we look into that? What actually led to all of that? Nobody seems to be thinking about where the golden age of Islam turned into the Renaissance, the European Renaissance, the reawakening of Europe. Where did that happen? Where Europe was awakening and coming out of that false image of religion, Muslims were drowning deeper and deeper into. The West, how it has controlled the entire world, especially the Muslim world, is through strategy. So if we don't have one as Muslim countries, if the Muslim world doesn't have one, they have absolutely no right to keep criticizing the West for having a strategy. What we lack is strategy. So for them, it became a game of catching up. And the Muslim world is still trying to catch up, if at all, and not being able to. So the entire world now has a specific image of the Muslim world.
Asad, thank you for being with us again.
Thank you very much for having me.
We're going to talk about the state of the Muslim world and the Muslim Ummah, but in particularly Muslim countries and their leaderships. Right now, especially post Israel's attack on Gaza, and this whole fiasco of craziness, people are asking, Muslims are asking, why isn't the Muslim world doing anything? And there's an interesting hadith which relates to this time, and it sums up our situation right now as a Muslim Ummah very nicely, where the Prophet ﷺ said to the Muslims that there's going to come a time where people will invite each other against you like they invite each other for dinner. And then the companion said, is it the reason going to be because of our low numbers? And the Prophet said that no, it's going to be because you won't have any kind of power. You'll be in a lot of numbers, but your power will be like the foam on water. It'll be nothing. This is the situation we're in. Where does this start? Because obviously the last 30 years, we've seen a lot of changes in the Muslim world and how the West has basically subjugated Muslim leaders. And it feels like Muslim countries are just following what the Western narrative is. They can't do anything. But how far back does this go?
It goes a lot far back then, if you look into history. But the thing is, because it's quite a stagnant situation. It's not going anywhere. It's not moving. It's not improving. It's just going from bad to worse. And it's been over almost a century now, over a century rather. We've been sitting and blaming, oh, the West has done this to the Muslim world. The West has done this to Muslim leadership, to the Muslim population. I think it's about time we moved on. Why sit and just criticize, oh, the West has done? Why have they been able to do it? Why don't we look into that? What actually led to all of that? Nobody seems to be thinking about where the golden age of Islam turned into the Renaissance, the European Renaissance, the reawakening of Europe. Where did that happen? Because there was a lot of work going on in the Muslim world as far as, academic work. And the translation movement that was started very earlier on by the Umayyads, but then Abu Ja'far al-Mansur, the Abbasid Caliph, he gave it a really big push and, translating all the Greek literature into, Arabic and into other languages of Muslim lands, into, Pahlavi or Persian, etc., and Arabic as well, and Latin literature. So the Muslim world actually had access to all sorts of knowledge. And they made very good use of it. I mean, I don't need to go into all of the inventions that the Muslim scientists did. I mean, it's a universal fact. It's known by all, so I don't need to go into that. Where did the West actually, again, take over? And why did the Muslims let go? When we talk of the Golden Age, we're looking at a Muslim community which was free to think according to the injunction of the Holy Quran. Ponder, think, reflect, contemplate. But then with time, things changed from thinking turned into a sin, right? Pondering, contemplating, reflecting, all turned into unforgivable crimes. You couldn't do that. So what was happening was that the clergy was taking over and wanted to have a very tight grip on intellectual thought, on academic thought, on any research, always keeping a very close eye. Oh, if science is suggesting this, and if it in any way coincides with any interpretation of the Holy Quran or of a hadith, then let's not even consider what scientific experiment and scientific facts and stats are suggesting. So it's when the clergy took over, even in the minds of the people, that is when Muslims started to lose control. Where Europe was awakening and coming out of that false image of religion.
And they were under the shackles of the clergy,
Under
of
the
the
shackles
church
of the clergy,
before.
right?
Yeah.
So they were realizing, right, at another extreme.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like atheism happened overnight. I mean, they were considering, they were saying, why would you not let scientific investigation take place? We should do that. Why are we not able to reason about and whatever is said in the scriptures? So they were getting out of that. Muslims were drowning deeper and deeper into that. And that too didn't all happen overnight. I mean, it's so shameful, I would say, when you think that your four imams, aimma, of the four madahib or the four schools of thought in Islam, all of them were persecuted and insulted so badly and killed even, right? Given all sorts of punishments, imprisoned for a long time, right? So that means that anything away from the orthodox clergy was not allowed, any thought or anything. But anyway, coming back to what we're talking about today. So the West has actually learned from whatever the contribution of the Muslim world for the intellectual and academic and scientific growth, and they made very good use of it.
Yeah.
On the other hand, the Muslims, I would say it's all down to infighting of Muslims all along, be it sectarian, be it geopolitical, be it whatever. It all comes down to that. They busied themselves so much into all of those infighting and all civil wars and sectarian hate against each other, trying to prove that no, you're not a good Muslim, I'm a good Muslim, you're not even a Muslim, I'm a Muslim. All of that took away.
Let's go into that infight. So you raised a good point about how the clergy were taking over, putting these shackles on their version of Islam, not allowing scientific investigation, reason, all these kind of things. Come forward and let's go to the colonial era, because I feel like the colonial era is usually on our podcast. We usually talk about this area because it's so important as well. And you talk about the infighting, all these kind of things. I feel like in this time, let's talk about the role, because the last caliphate or so-called political caliphate were the Ottomans. And that's, everyone talks about the Ottomans, the great time of the Ottomans. But as we've spoken about so much on this podcast, that it wasn't all, happy days for the Muslims in terms of the Ottoman. There were fierce opposition against the Ottomans from the Muslims as well. And this is where the West comes in as well, where Britain comes in. Let's talk about Britain, the Sharifs of Mecca, and the Ottoman. What happened there, coming on from this timeline?
Absolutely. So we come to the British in a bit, but let's talk about what was happening in Europe. So fast forward, the Crusades are over, the Crusades are done, and the West has realized that maybe this type of fighting is not the way forward.
Yeah. Okay.
And we need to do something else. So they relied on science, they relied on technology. They were, shipbuilding industry was flourishing. They were making ships, they were making seafaring easy, and they were making all sorts of trade routes and roads and whatnot. Advancements, right? They were developing monetary units. The Muslim world maybe didn't even seem sometimes to agree on one kind of on a single kind of monetary unit or measurement units. So they were kind of uniting. The united Europe is not a modern concept. It goes all the way back because they knew that we have to remain attached. We can have rivalries, but we need to remain attached. The Portuguese, the French, the British, the Dutch, all of them knew that now is the time, because the Muslim world can easily be subjugated because they've not advanced technologically, economically, financially,
or
religiously in any way. So they're a weak people. Let's go and get them. And then we see how, the north of Africa, the west of Africa being taken away by the French, most other parts of Africa being taken away by the British.
India.
India, especially, that was the crown of the jewel of the British crown. The biggest jewel of the British. But anyway, so when they come in, they bring in what the entire Muslim world lacked. They brought in modern education. They brought in economic systems, capitalism primarily, and they brought in administrative systems, which obviously was something which was lacking in the Muslim world. So with all of these three, and the biggest thing was strategy. It was a strategy that was adopted to bring the entire world under European control. So I'm not splitting them still. It's Europe taking over the entire world.
As one unit.
Yeah. Now the British interest particularly remained, of course, on the Muslim world. India having the largest population of Muslims in the world, even after the Ottoman the Ottoman Empire. So they're in India, and a constant threat is from the Ottoman Empire to them, right, which is kind of just next doors. And they're always thinking ways of how to mobilize Muslims and unite the Muslims to support the British Raj as compared to developing any kind of an emotional sentiment or attachment to the Ottoman Caliphate. The Ottomans knew that they had to maintain that and they had to showcase the element of Caliphate to be able to keep their head above the water and to keep the Muslims attached to them somehow. So they come in, the Muslims are without all of those things that the British had brought with them to take over. And it was very easy to take over. Yes, there was little fights. And I think the toughest one they had to fight was in Mysore with Tipu Sultan, who fell kind of last. The rest of them, maybe with Ranjit Singh was slightly difficult. But then, they did take over. They annexed the entire India. Yes, they left princely states with a little bit of self-governance, but they were just puppets of their colonial masters, and they didn't show any kind of resistance or anything at all. So this way, the Muslims gave in.
They gave in. So let's now talk about the end of the Ottoman Empire and what I was talking about earlier, the British coming in, using the Sharifs of Mecca as well. The reason I say this is because I think a lot of Muslims don't know this history. They think all the Muslim world was pro-Ottoman Empire. And it wasn't the case. Like you're saying, there was so much infighting going on. And the external united Western powers, they just used this and they, floated on the back of this opposition that Muslims had amongst each other, or the greed, or whatever you want to call it, nationalism. But let's talk about this, the fall of the Ottomans.
Right. With the fall of the Ottomans, you see, the First World War is very important. When we're talking of the Muslim world and what it's actually morphed into what it is right now, the First World War is very, very important. So we don't go into it. We know the Ottoman Empire is there. We know that the British India is there, ruled and governed by the British, of course. And then comes World War I. And the Ottomans decide to side with Germany, with the contesting side of the Axis forces, as you call them, and not with the allies of Great Britain, the Allied forces. And that is where Britain obviously is alarmed, because what could be expected at that time was that the Muslims of India are going to side with Turkey, with the Ottomans, and they're going to turn into a massive force. And there was a lot of efforts going on from the Ottoman Empire to include all Muslims with them. But then the Muslims of India, all of them, and we've got thousands and thousands of letters written by even small, tiny anjumans, as you call them, little local bodies of Muslims, colleges, Muslim schools, Muslim organizations, all of them writing to the Viceroy, and all of them being recorded here in the records back home here in London, saying that we are loyal with you, we will remain loyal with you, we are not going to side with the Ottomans. They can be Muslims, we can have a religious sentiment attached to them, but politically speaking, we're not going to side with them. We are with you, we will remain loyal to you.
This is so crucial, because even when it comes to colonial rule,
Yeah.
today Muslims are very emotional about how India was subjugated,
Yeah.
but they forget that actually the Muslims at the time, the majority were actually supporting the British. I mean, World War One is a prime example.
Of course.
You've got the Ottoman Empire, the last caliphs,
Absolutely.
and you've got the Indian Muslims saying that no, we're gonna side with the British.
With the
That
British. Right?
that's an insane piece of history people
Absolutely.
don't know about.
Absolutely. I mean, this is India, right? And Indian Muslims. If you look at the Middle East,
Yeah,
all of the states there, which we today call the United Arab Emirates and etc., all of those emirates, and again, all of this is on record. We've shown it before. You can show it again in this podcast if you like. They were begging the British to go there,
yeah,
take control of them, and protect them, and to turn them into mandates or protectorates, which eventually happened after the First World War. All right. Then you've got the Sharif of Mecca. And then you've got the conspiracies that are going on between the British and not any European power, but the little Muslim powers that we had, right? So the British actually, and then all of this is on record. How McMahon writes to the Secretary of State for India here and to the Viceroy as well that I've spoken to the Sharif of Mecca to debilitate the Ottomans, so that they don't have any Muslim support at all. What we need is to establish a caliphate. And I've spoken to the Sharif of Mecca, and he's happy because if you have a caliph sitting right in the heart of the Muslim world and being the custodian of the two shrines, the holy shrines, all Muslims are going to come rushing to the holy shrines, and they're going to be very happy to accept such a caliph.
and this is the British saying this.
So the British saying this, the Sharif of Mecca agreeing to it, Hussain ibn Ali, Sharif Hussain ibn Ali of Mecca. So that is what was happening. And then after the World War, the First World War, now all of those states in the Middle East were taken over by the British. And again, I would emphasize, it wasn't like the British took over through warfare or anything. Most of the times, it was them inviting, saying, please, can you come and take control of us? We cannot survive without
The Muslims saying
the Muslim leaders from those emirates and etc. saying that. And then, if you want to look at Saudi Arabia, because that's very important, the two holy shrines, you cannot deny how important the role of Saudi Arabia has always been. So the British had deals with the Sharifs and with the Sauds as well, Ibn Saud of Najd. So they had certain deals with them, and they had certain other deals with the Sharif of Mecca, of Hijaz. So they just wanted to, again, the divide and rule policy. They knew how to play with the dynamics and how to keep their control over the region, which they very successfully did.
Yeah.
Now, people talk of, how the Western companies from England and from other parts of the West, America as well, went to Saudi Arabia in search of oil, right? So the oil politics. And people try to draw a line somewhere to say, oh, this is when in the 1920s, this is when the West started taking over, and they sent their petroleum engineers and their oil companies to dig around and to have a look and to excavate and etc. etc. It starts way before that. It starts from the colonial days, when in their heyday, Muslims weren't even able to resolve small issues. I mean, especially, the Hajj has always been very closely tied to pandemics. So whenever a pandemic would happen, because Muslims would travel from all parts of the world to Mecca, and they would bring along all the viruses and everything, right? And then they would take back all of those viruses. So they wanted to see how to contain those pandemics that are spreading through Hajj, or the pilgrimage, the annual pilgrimage.
The Muslims wanted to see
the colonial masters wanted to bring that, because the Muslims they were indifferent.
As in, they were just studying this.
They were studying this. They were seeing that this is one of the greatest causes of the spread of pandemics, and they wanted to limit it. And they reach a conclusion that it's all got to do with Zamzam, the well, right? And this is where they come and they wash their bodies and do this and whatnot. They drink of it, etc. And there we need to look at Zamzam, why the water is contaminated. It's that effort of the British and of the Americans who started looking into how Zamzam could be cleansed. So before Saudi Arabia turned into a petrostate, it was actually a hydrostate that it had been converted into.
Interesting.
All
This
of
is all
that,
on record.
all on record. All of that, those diggings go in search of how the Zamzam water, where it could be, what kind of tributaries could be used, where it could be filtered from, how it could be brought up, etc., etc. And all of those diggings laid a blueprint for what was later going to turn into the search for oil. That is when they actually struck this realization to say, oh, there seems to be something much more precious hidden down there under this soil.
Interesting. So going on from here, what happened in terms of the ending of the Muslim power, so-called Ottoman power?
This is when, decolonization, as you call it.
Yeah.
Ask me, I don't believe in any such term as decolonization. And I don't believe in the concept of a post-colonial world. There is no post-colonial world. Apparently, where these terms come from is when the Western powers started, the colonial powers started retracting their control and apparently giving back self-governance.
Yeah, but there wasn't.
There wasn't anything like that. They were very wise. And I don't even agree with people who say, oh, they were very shrewd, they were cunning, they were conniving. What, you could have become cunning and conniving. Why didn't you?
Yeah. Why didn't you even realize?
Of course. So the West, if they were using their intellect, you should have grown a brain and seen what to do about it and do something for yourself. So that is why I said at the start, it's about time we moved on. Oh, the West is doing this, the Western media is, you're supplying, you're giving them the fuel to do that. You've always given and they've used their intellect. Nothing wrong. You should have done the same if you could, right? Now, what happens is that apparently when the colonial powers start retracting, they were wise because they knew that we don't want to waste any more resources there. We can still control. The times have advanced. Technology is going to enable us to still remain their masters. So let's make our nerve center stronger. Let's make our the hub and control them from there. So we have the strings tied to our fingers anyway. So the self-governance that was given back to these Muslim states was all on the ground and on the rules established by their colonial masters. This is how it's going to happen. This is going to be the political setup. This is how you're going to have an election. This is how this is going to happen, and this is how this is going to, and this is going to be our Governor General. So you always have a representative sitting in there. Commonwealth, these days, we look at it as something negligible. We don't even care when the king goes there and delivers a speech and whatever. It seems apparently. It's not. It still is a big, big source of wealth. That is how the West controls the Muslim world. So it was given to the type of people who not only the British, but all of the colonial masters knew that they will remain tied. They're going to be our puppets and their strings are going to be attached, tied to our fingers, and we will make them dance the way we want. Now, what can you do? When you say, we think of solutions or what can be done, right? And we tend to usually come up with very simplified, oversimplified solutions. Oh, why don't the Muslims unite? Is there a Muslim world? Is there an Islamic world? There isn't. So all of them have their interests tied. They cannot make a single move. I mean, it's like a checkmate for all of them. They cannot make a single move to the front, to the back, diagonal, nowhere. It's a checkmate.
Yeah.
It's a stalemate rather now.
They're stuck.
They're stuck because they've got economic interests tied to the West. They've got to rely, politically they have to rely on the West. They cannot go against any policies, political policies, the global political policies, without looking at their colonial masters again, which still exist.
You know, even the point you raised earlier in terms of technology and advancement, the Muslim world is looking towards the West. Just take weapons, for example.
Yeah.
All the weapons that the Muslim countries are getting, it's all coming from the Western world.
Absolutely. You know, when this COVID-19 spread, there was a little meme that appeared. It was really interesting. So it showed some clergy mullahs sitting after Salat and raising their hands for prayer. and praying that, oh Allah, please enable the West to make a vaccine so that we can get the vaccine, survive this pandemic, and then pray for the death of the West. So, I mean, you haven't been able to develop anything at all.
Yeah, exactly.
You're having to rely totally. The Muslim world seems to be complaining all the time about, oh, the Western media is carrying out such and such propaganda and all of that. That is true, right?
Yeah, I mean,
That is true. The West, how it has controlled the entire world, especially the Muslim world, is through a strategy.
Yeah.
Now, in the colonial days, that is when Orientalism took off. That is when you had colonial administrators like W. Hunter and William Muir trying to understand Islam and present it to the rest of the world.
Yeah, going out, learning
Going out and
Arabic,
learning.
studying the Quran,
Exactly.
studying the Islamic sources.
Absolutely. Where were the Muslims?
Yeah.
If they disagreed with any of the ideas presented by such,
They should have responded.
They should have responded. They weren't there. So for them, it became a game of catching up. And the Muslim world is still trying to catch up, if at all, and not being able to. Because you had the academics involved. That is what Orientalism was all about, right? You had the academics involved. You had the politicians involved. You had geographers involved. You had geologists involved. You had petroleum engineers involved. You had this involved. You had that involved.
Huge operation, yeah.
And then on top of that is the propaganda, the machinery that is built around it. So the entire world now has a specific image of the Muslim world. If the Muslim world was able to unite, if it were at all, the first thing they could have done was to have some kind of a counter-propaganda. But can you have a counter-propaganda? You have a Muslim conference of all Muslim countries, OIC, or I think it was,
like
and then the
56,
discussion,
57
and then the discussion goes on, are we going to invite Saudi Arabia or not? For God's sake, I mean, come on. Is it really a Muslim conference of all Muslim countries? How can you leave out such a big stakeholder of yours? So are you ever going to be able to unite? How will, if you were to have a platform to carry out propaganda from the Muslim world, how would Saudi Arabia not speak about Yemen?
Exactly.
They're both Muslim countries, right?
Exactly.
And Iran, what would the Saudi stance be? Or what would that Muslim platform even be talking about? Because Yemen has its own interests lying somewhere again in the Middle East. Saudi Arabia has its interests with the United States of America. Well, who doesn't? But anyway, right? Turkey has got its own agenda. Erdogan gave one of the points of his manifesto that he showcased was that we will turn Turkey. We will bring Turkey at par with the Western capitalism. Is that really Muslim aim? So it's also confused. I mean, you are fighting a political war, but you've still got religion in the mix, Islam, and that's not just letting you move in any direction. You're paralyzed because it's so much confusing and confused already that you find no way out of it. So it's a political war. They've got political associations, they've got economic, not associations, dependencies.
Dependencies, yeah. The shackled.
100% dependencies. That there is absolutely no way that the Muslims can seem to come together.
What's the solution?
The solution, like I said, we tend to oversimplify it. It cannot be oversimplified.
Yeah, of course.
The first thing, as you referred to the founder of Islam, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, right at the start. I mean, he kind of knew, he gave a clear roadmap to say, this is where my Ummah is going to head to. The problem has been, like, you said that there is a hadith. There are many hadiths which say, my Ummah will become split into 73 sects. That was a warning. That didn't mean that the Ummah starts to make it happen.
To make it happen. Exactly.
Because these are the words of our Prophet. So let's make it happen. Right? The Prophet said the caliphate will remain, the rightly guided caliphate will remain for 30 years. Now people question, why was Imam Hussain trying so hard? It had been already 30 years. Why didn't he just say, all right, okay, yes, my grandfather said it's only going to be 30 years. So yeah, maybe let's just let it fall apart. No. Warnings are not meant to be, because anywhere, even in the world today, when there is a weather warning, that doesn't mean you go out and you make things happen. Say, if they say the weather warning suggests there can be a wildfire somewhere in some part of the world, that doesn't mean you go there with a matchstick and make it happen.
Make it happen.
So that the prophecy can come true.
Or walk right into the fire.
Absolutely. So that is what needs to be done. You need to see that religion is something which is to do with your heart, with you as a person, and then see what to do, how to control. Because you see, even in the time of the rightly guided caliphs, you go back to the early times of the Islamic Empire, as it was spreading, they were so innovative.
Yeah.
I mean, you tell someone and they find it really hard to believe that the first lingua franca, or the official language of the Islamic Empire, was Greek.
Really?
Not Arabic. So that in the time of the Umayyads, because they'd taken over Syria, and Syria was a seaport, and they had their, obviously that is where it was a conduit of trade with the Byzantines, right? And they would come through Greece. So all of the records were kept in Greek. The Arabs from the peninsula, they didn't know how to read and write generally.
Yeah.
So the records were maintained in Greek, correspondence continued in the Greek language, until many years later on, when I think it was Abdul Malik of the Umayyad Caliph who then again said that all the records need to be translated into Arabic. But that was innovation.
Yeah, exactly.
That was survival tactics, how to make your way through. That wasn't, I'm not supporting the Umayyads in any way, but all I'm saying is that where there are good things, there are good things, and we need to acknowledge them. Now, at this moment, we say, no, Islam has to dictate and define everything. Well, then come on and then bring some solution. You keep talking about the Islamic economic system. You haven't been able to present it in the viable way.
And everyone's Islam is different, right? So Iran's is something else, Saudi is something else.
So the Iranis
everyone's just using it as their own political tool.
So Iranis can believe what they like. I can believe what I like.
Yeah, but we can come together and
we can come together. We can, keep communicating the right message to others. Say, if I think my Islam should be promoted.
You can preach that.
I can preach that to an individual or to a group of people or whatever. But when it comes to where I belong, my nation, the fraternity, that is where things need to be fixed, because they're not. Because you talk of Iran, the rest of the Muslim world looks at it as a Shia majority country, which it is, right? And then it feels as if it's been isolated and it's been sitting in isolation.
Even when Iran was being attacked just a few weeks ago by Israel, there was, on social media, there was so many discussions how a lot of Sunnis are silent.
Yeah.
And they're quiet. And there's secretly, some of them are actually enjoying it and liking it. So that's all there.
Absolutely.
That's all there, and you can't ignore it, even though it is ignored.
Absolutely. So, there needs to be a strategy. Like I said, the West has always thrived on a strategy.
Yeah.
They've always had a strategy, be it the pre-colonial days, be it the colonial days, be it the decolonization, be it the what they call, and I don't believe in a post-colonial world, they have a strategy. And they should. So if we don't have one as Muslim countries, if the Muslim world doesn't have one, they have absolutely no right to keep criticizing the West for having a strategy.
Yeah.
What we lack is strategy. What we lack is compartmentalizing. This is where faith goes. This is where religious literature goes. This is how much it can dictate our social life. This is politics. This is geography. This is this, and this is this. And all of that big board of compartments, or a shelf with compartments, is going to turn into a strategy. So as long as we are just haphazardly, randomly mixing things into religion, religion into politics, politics into... It was political Islam that has turned Islam into a terrorist religion, as it is seen by the rest of the world. How much Muslims are to blame, how much the rest of the world is to be blamed, that is a separate discussion maybe for some other time.
Yeah.
But this is what has happened. So political interests, where should they lie? Should it always be through war and all of this? And why is that? The message of Islam, if you want really to get it out, go and talk to people. But don't make it a political agenda or a manifesto.
Yeah, and use it for your own objectives.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. We'll just carry on discussing these topics. Yeah, stay tuned, everyone.